Now, if you're like me, you probably have seen a couple of examples of base64 encoding, and you most likely have seen them from image sources on the image tag, where instead of a path to a specific image, you have a long string of numbers and weird characters. Now, somehow that combined together to form an image. So today I want to go over how we can convert something into a base64 equivalent and convert it back. So hopefully this will help you with understanding of how base64 encoding works, and hopefully will help you with your future projects. Now, for a best way to learn about this, I think, is to actually do it. So for us, let's do an example where we convert the word hello into a base64 equivalent. Let's see how that works. So the first step to convert something like a string like hello into base64 equivalent is to convert it into binary. So the binary form of hello, we can use a website here, which will tell us exactly what the binary form of this word is, right? So the next step of this conversion process is to convert this into a 6-bit binary. As you can see here, each letter is now here is represented by 8 bits, right? 8 ones or zeros to equivalent to the letter H. Now in base64 encoding, you can only use 6 bits. So I'll do one example to show you how this works. You basically grab the first 6 digits and then you put that here as the first set of digits. Now you have 2 remainder here. Now all you have to do is concatenate it with the next 4 digits, which is over here. So you do this and you continue to do this until you reach the end. Now as you reach the end, you are going to run into some leftovers. So if you converted this correctly, you'll see this. And I'll use the equal sign to denote that there's no extra letters left. And usually this is filled by 0 zeros when you convert it. So for now, we'll use this to denote that this is the end. So now you have several 6-bit representation of the word hello in binary. So the next step is we have to convert each of these into numbers. Now, if you remember your binary to decimal conversion logic, basically they start with 1. The first letter here is 1, and then the next one is 2, and then it's 4, 8, 16, 32. So if you add the numbers up where there's 1 in it, so here is 2, and then here is 16. So if you add this up, you get the number 18, right? So you do the same for all of these. And if you don't want to do the math, there's certainly websites where you can, help you convert binary to decimal. So you get 6 over here. So if you do all of this, I'll save you some time. You get the following numbers, right? This is the decimal representation of the word hello. And now the last step is you want to convert the decimal into its ASCII form. Now there's a handy table. You can probably find this online somewhere, but this will show you what you need to, which number corresponds to which letter on the ASCII table. So for this, let's say you look at the number 18. 18 is down here, which is the letter S, capital S, and then the letter 6, which is capital G, 21, which is capital V, and then you want to see number 44, which is the lowercase s, and then you look at number 27, which is the lowercase b, number 6, which is uppercase G, and then the number 60, which is the number 8. So this is the representation, the base64 encoded version of the word hello. We can verify this by going to, let's see, is there maybe there's a website where you can convert base64 back to its ASCII form and back and forth. So let's convert this here. So you can decode this base64 string, and you see that it's decoded to the word hello. So that is how this whole base64 conversion process works. It seems pretty fun. And so let's say you're working in JavaScript in Node.js and you want to automate this process. Because if you're doing this by hand, let's say there's hundreds of letters long, hundreds of words in a paragraph, you don't want to do this by hand. It's very tedious. So luckily with Node.js, there's a very easy way to do this, and we can program something to do it. So let's write a simple program that converts something from its ASCII form into its base64 equivalent. So we'll have a variable called inputs. Let's make the input called hello. And then we can make a variable called buffer. Buffer would use the built-in Node.js buffer library to convert this into the desired format. So it's very handy for all sorts of things, but for our case, we're just going to convert it into a base64 version. So you can do new buffer, and then you can call the from function, and then you enter the input. And now the buffer contains the actual input string. And now what do we want to do with it? Well, let's just do base64 converted is equal to buffer dot toString. You can call the toString function and then tell it what type of format you want it. I want base64 format of that string. And now if we do a console log of base64 converted, let's press save. You should see, let's see, base. If I do noindex.js, you should see the converted form of this, which is exactly what we have up here, right? As you can see, there's an extra list in the end, but that doesn't really matter. So this is actually the correct way. Like we did it correctly by hand in the beginning, but now we did it correctly with Node. So very handy. Now, how do we reverse this back? Well, it's very easy to revert it back. You can do a, let's see, let's call a variable original equals buffer. We use the same buffer, that toString, but this time we want to change it to an ASCII form. Now, if we do a log, original ASCII, this should give us hello back. As you can see, it's back to hello. So now we just converted, a simple string from base64 back and forth. It's very fun. Now let's do something more practical, I guess. So like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, you've seen these cases where an image is encoded into base64 form and then back and forth, right? So let's see how we can do it with Node. So you can, here I have a Pentacle logo file right next to it. It's a JPEG file. So what we want to do is we want to load the JPEG file into Node.js and then convert it into base64 directly in memory, and then log it out what the value of that image is in the console. So how do we do it? It's a very, very similar process, except this time we need to use the FS library to load in the file. You may use FS async if you want, but for our case, it's very simple. We're just going to do it synchronously. So we have a file. Let's call a file buffer. File buffer, we're just going to read file sync. We're just going to read the file in, and it's pentacle logo.jpg. This is the file that's currently residing on our directory, pentacle logo.jpg. And we have this file in buffer now, in memory. So let's convert it into a base64 image. Base64 image equals file buffer, and then you do toString, and then convert it to base64. Now this will convert this whole image into a base64 format. So if we log this out, you should see a giant string that's similar to what you see in an image tag on the web. There it is. Now this is how it's done. If you're ever curious about base64 encoding, and this is how you encode an entire image into its base64 format into a string. Now that's how it's done. Now let's do the reverse, okay? Now if you want to do the reverse, you have to input the string value as the actual original input. So let's do an input. Let's use string interpolation. Now this was the thing I just copied from the console. This is a base64 encoded representation of the logo. Now let's do a image buffer equals new buffer from. Now we want to do a input, which is what we have, and we want to change it to we want to convert the input into a actual file, right? So we want to convert this by telling the buffer that this input is a base64 format, and let's load it into the memory. Now this image is in the memory. We want to use the FS library to write file sync. Oh, we had to import it back. I think I disabled it. Let's see. Yeah, let's bring the file library back. Now we want to FS write file sync, and we want to write the image out. So let's call it a full JPEG, and then we want to tell it that the source of the image is from the buffer. So if I press save and run this, watch what happens to this directory here. Oops, it should be buffer, not array buffer. So if I run this, as you can see, a new file has been generated. It's called foo.jpg, which is the file that we made. And if you click on it, it looks exactly the same as before, right? So now we've just converted a base64 string into an actual file. So this is a very nice way of converting things back and forth. So I want to do something a little different. I want to do a small test, right? So I want to actually convert our source file like this. Let's see if this works, right? Instead of doing image, I want to convert this .js file into a base64. So instead of pentacle.jpg, let's do index.js. So we're converting out the file that we're currently working on into a base64 format, right? So if I run this, I commented out everything else. I'm just going to see what is the base64 encoded version of this index.js file. So do this. Oh, okay, so we actually can convert the index.js into a base64 representation. And now let's do the same thing to see if we can actually convert this index file into another file, right? Convert it back into an index file from this base64 encoding. Now I want to do foo.js. Right? Let's see if this works. So if I run this, I should see a new file called foo.js. There it is. And it contains exactly the source code that we just wrote. So this is very, very cool. So you can actually experiment around and play with this with like all sorts of different files. It's a nice way to find out the base64 representation of any file. So yeah, that concludes this quick tutorial. I hope you guys learned something, and definitely come subscribe to our channel, visit our Twitter, and don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. The link is in the description below. I hope to see you guys next time.